You're listening to The Venomous Fringe, Cryptids and Paranormal, with hosts Chris Fringe and Ryan Tremblay. Join them as they dive into the macabre of our world and dive into the madness and the mysteries that lie above it. Good evening, Fringeaholics and newcomers. You're listening into The Venomous Fringe. I'm your host, Chris Fringe, and join me tonight alongside my co-host and gatekeeper, Ryan Tremblay, as we sit down with an eyewitness from Michigan who has had a fair share of Dogman encounters and incidents on their property, as well as also them explaining a couple encounters that they've heard from people around the area. It's a pretty chilling, fun, exciting little thing to talk about with Dogman, so I hope you guys enjoy tonight's episode. One of the biggest things of the Venomous Fringe is that we always talked about Dogman, and it's always good to bring it up once in the blue moon again and again. So here you go, guys, a nice little care package entering into May. This episode, I cannot wait to get into it, but first and foremost, I just want to do a brief introduction. I hope you guys are doing pretty good. How is everybody? Of course, for everybody listening into our premiere chat now, and this is coming out after the premiere, hope you guys tuning in afterwards are doing good, because it's been pretty crazy by me in my state with the quarantine and lockdown. We're beginning to open up things, but it's slow. And I think the transition for each state too, such as Texas and Georgia, I know a couple other places down south are opening up very little. So I hope everything is going okay for everybody in each of their states, and also too, not just in the United States, but also all around the world. I know that there's also a lot of international listeners, so I hope you guys are also safe during this outbreak. It's a crazy time to be alive. I guess a lot of people can say that 2020 is the most toxic entrance of a decade ever. However, I think that in a brinks of positivity that we're going to get through these tough times. I know that we keep hearing it time and time again, but somebody who does not even as this is a topic that we can talk about on the show because it has no relevance to cryptids or paranormal. You know, to talk about this though, but to just take a second to just see how you guys are all doing, because it's affected everybody differently. I know people I know personally who've been affected by it differently, as well as I also know family who've been affected by it, and I'm sure that you guys have been affected by it in some sort of way as well. So I really do hope you guys are okay and you guys are safe throughout this crazy time. But it will get better. I think it will, at least, and I hope that you guys have that faith as well, because I strongly do think it'll get better very soon. But going into tonight's interview, the location is Michigan. I find Michigan to be such a very heavy hotspot for Dogman activity. I think activity such as in Michigan is probably high in grids. If you were to throw out there the top 3 states, I'd throw Wisconsin, Michigan, and Texas. And personally, Michigan would be in the top between 1 and 2, because Michigan just has a lot of encounters, especially in the Michigan Peninsula. You gotta remember too, a lot of the stories of Dogman first came from Michigan. So it's very notorious that to sit down with someone that says they have a Dogman encounter in Michigan, I'm not going to sit back and throw out an empty eye. I'm going to be drawn with curiosity, because when they mention location, it's very similar to many reports. You automatically know it's a Dogman encounter. But of course, you always have to take things in with a grain of salt. In this case, tonight, speaking with this eyewitness, is going to be a very fundamental time and exploration. With all that being said, folks, I hope you guys enjoy this interview. I cannot wait to showcase it, and we'll see you guys at the end. On the Venomous Fringe right now, me and Ryan are sitting down with Allie. Allie from Michigan. Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing very good, very good. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule this evening to sit down and talk with me and Ryan about some of the Dogman activity in Michigan. It's very good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Allie, one of the first things I want to ask you about is, how long have you been living in Michigan? And at the same time, another one, how long have you known about Dogman?
I've lived in Michigan for 7 years. I mean, I was born here, but I actually left. I was gone for 20 years, and I came back. It's been 7 years that I've been here, but I've known about Dogman for the past 11, 12 years.
Now, did you happen to know of it through the infamous Legend song, or was it through various newspapers or websites that attracted the attention?
Well, actually, I found out because of my father. He actually had an experience up north by Manistee, which is Wexford County, and it's around a small town Loser, where he had actually encountered a situation where he was with my stepbrother, which of course is his son, and they were having a campfire with a group of children, and they had said that they were telling a story about the dog man, and all of a sudden they started to hear branches breaking and everything out by Manistee and stuff, and that's from where I heard it from. I started hearing it from him, and then from there forward, it was actually my brother who had seen the sighting around the area where I actually live right now. So.
It's interesting to note in Wexford because there's been some reports there over the years, and it's pretty interesting too because Michigan is indeed a hotspot for dogman activity, even before the Legend song and, of course, the current media with it. But that's pretty interesting, especially because a lot of times when, you talk about dogman as a whole, there appears to be some sort of coincidence where there's a sighting, and it's not like pop culture thing. It's just something that I've read with reports. So being in Michigan, you've definitely had a fair share of running into this creature or having at least a few experiences to share. From start to finish, from the beginning to end, what were some of these encounters that you had come across?
As for myself?
From what you had heard and seen about in Michigan.
Well, I mean, I've heard, like, other people had tell stories, like, sightings that they have encountered with, such as in, like, my brother, too, he had said that he had heard, or he had seen, actually heard and then seen a dog man walking around and walking on all fours around our area in our county. And then I've heard a friend of mine who had also said that he had a teacher as well, had gone out and himself encountered with a dog man, and then he had one of his students actually draw out the picture. So ever since then, he had put the picture in his room and let everybody know that this thing is real, and he let them know what exactly it looked like and so on. And then I've also had people that I've known, like hunters as well, where they would actually go in the woods and, they would go out hunting for deer or whatever it is that they were hunting for. And then they also encountered where these dogman-looking creature, big old snout, big old ears, and 7-8 feet tall, muscular, and, they would be shooting at it, and nothing, it wouldn't go down, and then it's just like one would run, and the other ones would just like freak out because they've seen something that was a dogman-like creature, basically a werewolf, is what they would say.
And when they mentioned it was a werewolf, they had a good description on it from standing at roughly, at least 7 to 8 feet tall, that they were able to get a good visual on it despite seeing something in such quick seconds.
Yeah, they would look at it. They'd be out there looking at it for at least a few minutes, seconds, and then they would just like, oh no, it's a werewolf-looking creature. This thing was just tall, big ears, big old snout. One of them actually had said that one of them was smiling at them, and it just kept smiling at them, and it just freaked them, and they started running. The other ones one of them was shooting, of course, and then just ran off, and then the other one's like, okay, this thing was following me. I'm walking through the trail. This thing's just walking aside of me. He turns around. All of a sudden, this big old creature, which is a dogman looking type thing, came out and just like, they explained it as more as like an American Werewolf in London type of dog, but not on all fours, more like standing on its hind legs kind of thing. And it's just like, they just took off, and it's like, no, that's a werewolf, So, I've had a lot of people that, especially hunters, as friends of mine, that actually go out and hunt around the area where I live, and they've had a lot of sightings like that. I even spoken to my father a couple of days ago, and he had said himself too that one of his friends was walking through the trail a year ago, and he said that as he was walking through the trail, something started throwing rocks at him. He turned around, and it's just like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden it just rocks throwing at him too, and then he had seen something like that too. So
for a lot of the reports, we've often heard of some sort of intimidation and provocation, and in this case with throwing rocks. We also see that in Bigfoot cases. So
right.
It's heavy to think in a lot of these Dogman reports that they show themselves in the way they do. And for you, what would be like your overall opinion on a creature like this? I mean, for you, for knowing it for a certain amount of time, do you yourself have an opinion on what this creature is?
I mean, with my experiences, I've never had an encounter with a Bigfoot, but my experiences is with a Dogman. To be honest with you, I did see something that looked like a Dogman standing on its hind legs, 7-8 feet tall, and it did have a big old snout. It did have big, ears, like sharp ears. I've seen enough to where, you can see its muscular body and its black fur, and it smelled like really bad dog and in flesh and blood. So, I believe that it would be more of a Dogman if I had to say,
For these experiences too, would you be able to share what you had seen? What?
Yeah. So it was after I had gone out of work. Because I was working second shift, and since I live out in the woods, I live in Allegan County, which of course, there's two areas. See, in the state of Michigan, I know that Dogman is known around the whole state of Michigan, but there are two counties that are more likely enough to where everybody sees the Dogman. So either it would be Wexford County or Allegan County. But see, I live in Allegan County, so Allegan County is actually a really big forest. And I live by the forest. So one night I had came home from second shift, and it was around 11:40 at night. And as I was driving, down the road, heading towards my house, we don't have any lights on the road. We don't have those, poles or anything where you have the lights and stuff. So, it's out in the woods and out in the boonies. So as I was driving, I got into my driveway, and my lights were flashing towards the window, which of course is my bedroom window, but then it started flashing towards the trees next to my window. So as I turned, I saw this big old, Dogman looking creature. I had he was at least 7-8 feet tall. He had big old snout. He had big ears. He had sharp ears, muscular, black fur, and he was just moving his head back and forth and stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I thought I was seeing things. So I started rubbing my eyes, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm seeing things, but it was still there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So as I parked my car, I kind of turned off the ignition and everything. I just stayed in there for 6-7 minutes because I was afraid to actually go out, because you got to understand too, it was late at night. It was during a work day, which is a week. And there was nobody around, everybody was asleep and stuff. So, I didn't want to make a big old scandal trying to wake up anybody. So, as I was in the car, I was like, well, I need to go out, So, I just opened the door, I closed the door, I walked out, and I was walking, and I kept staring in that direction. So, I started to smell dog, really, really dark, really strong dog smell, And as I was walking in that way, I started getting chills, and then all of a sudden I heard big old, I don't know it's kind of and I don't know if it was bending down or anything, but all I know is that ever since I heard that, I felt like it was walking on 4 legs, and you could hear it, walking around, and then all of a sudden, as I walked towards the house, this thing started running, and I didn't know if it was running at me, so I got so scared, so I ran up, opened my door, and I just got inside, But, I mean, that was one of my experiences that had happened to me during the weekday after I had gotten out of work.
I couldn't imagine just seeing something like that and not being, and being too, and not even, and literally just being, you're far away from a distance in a vehicle, but I mean, not too far away. So I couldn't imagine just being not too close. And I mean, literally in many cases. And like I had mentioned to you, because we had spoken prior to the start of the show, about how you could be in a vehicle, and despite you being protected by 4 doors, and Ryan, you can agree with me on this too, that you could be protected in a car, but these things can still come up to the car, they can still get on the top of the hood, and they can do whatever. So it's a very scary situation to put yourself in. But, I mean, not even put yourself in, but, like, just to be in general. Like.
Right. And seeing the thing, too, Chris, is that, like, when I saw that thing, and I'll be honest with you, my first thought was, like, should I drive my car to that area where he's at? But at the same time, it's like, why would I do that? I mean, like, how do I know? I don't even know if it's even the thing that I'm looking at, or what if it comes and hits my car and pounds on it? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I was just so scared and terrified. I was like, I didn't want to take the chances, so I just ended up parking my car, like I said, waiting 6-7 minutes, and then it's like, okay, I need to get out of here. Ain't nobody gonna save me, so I have to get out. And it's just like, yeah, it was a scary night.
The following day, did you by any chance happen to look around the area and see if you could perhaps...
I did. I actually did, but I didn't see anything. I did see a couple branches torn down from that end, but that's about it, But I did go, yes, after the next day, because it was still another work day anyways. I had gone out early, and I walked out there, and I did, like I said, I did see a couple branches torn down, but that's about it. I didn't see any footprints or nothing.
And had there been any subsequent encounters or anything since that one particular incident?
In my property, or?
The property, or in general, because in the region of Michigan where you're at, there's been a lot of reports, or at least from past and present, in the area, because Michigan is a hotspot, and as I mentioned earlier, there's always activity within the area, and even if it was just something small, and in this case, but I wanted to ask you too, because I thought you had mentioned that there was a particular incident with coyote screams and
yeah, that was actually within like 2 months after that. Yes, I had came home, and this was actually during a weekend, and it was around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And as I drove in the house, I walked in, and I came back outside just to get some fresh air, and then I started to hear noises. So then I heard it. I don't, like I had said, I don't know if it were hellhounds. I don't know if it was coyotes or wolves. But all I know is that it seemed to me like there was at least a few of those. It had to be at least 2, 3, 4, maybe probably 3 or 4 of them. I don't know if they were, like I said, coyotes, hellhounds. I don't know. But this thing, whatever it was carrying those things, those coyotes or wolves or whatever they were. And as I turned around and I looked in that direction, I could smell a lot of like flesh and blood, but then I could smell dog too, you know what I mean? Like mostly dog, like really, really bad dog. And in one of the trees you could see like the green eyes, and this thing was actually standing on the 7-8 feet tall, and I could see his pointing ears, but I couldn't see his mouth, just his pointy ears, and I could see his sharp, like his eyes. They were green, but they were kind of like slanted, like a little bit slanted, but mostly green eyes. And there was no light flashing that because it was super dark out there. Like I said, we live out in the woods, so there was absolutely no light flash in that direction. So I was out there. I was terrified because I was sitting there looking at it for at least 20, 15 minutes, because I just kept staring at it. It was just looking at me, and I'm like, am I seeing things? Like, oh my gosh, So I did actually, at that time, I did run in. I had actually had my father go out there, because my dad used to be a cop too, and he had actually experiences where he himself, people would call him and tell him that there was sightings about this, sightings about that, all kinds of, cryptids or paranormal stuff. So, he walked out there with my mother, and they were actually looking out there, but there was really nothing out there. And then I called my brother. He came out there, and he was out there for 25 minutes. While he was out there, he was using his phone with his flashlight, and you could hear something running around. And my brother said the same thing. He's like, well, I could hear something running, and I could hear something moving, like big stomps, but I can't see it. You know what I mean? It's like, so he was just out there for a few minutes. He left. So as they left, like, I came inside the house, and I was just laying there in bed, and all of a sudden this thing, the same thing that I had seen with the green eyes, came by the window. And I was like, okay, what the heck is going on here? My curtains are closed, and this thing was, he was tall. It was tall, so it was just looking through the window, but you could see his eyes, his green eyes, the same eyes as what I saw outside.
And that's a very interesting report, too, because there appeared to have been activity, and what you had heard is the sounds normally of coyote-like sounds, or in general, like hellhound-like. It did, like, there's a lot of vocalizations, and Ryan, with vocalizations like that, there's a normal type of canine type response. I've often heard it in a few different reports, too. But
yeah, I've heard it quite often as well. I had the coyote vocals as well in my encounters. So it's very normal. It's very common. I think it's kind of like a hunting cry for them.
Yeah.
Also, too, when it comes to the initial report, from what I remember, you said there was in your one encounter you heard this particular sound, like, and I may mention it was like a bone popping sound.
Yes, I did, and that was actually the same sound that I saw when I got out of my car. When I was walking towards, like, when I was looking in that direction before I got into my property, like towards, like, coming into the my front door of the house. That's when it did that, and then it started walking. Like, you could hear it walking on all fours, but like it seemed like he was taking down branches. But then all of a sudden he started running, and that's what scared me. I ran to the house, and that's when I opened the door. I was like, I can't. It was just too scary because I didn't know, because it was so dark out there. I didn't know if it was actually coming at me or not. All I know is what I saw is like it was crazy. And then to hear that and then walk, and then all of a sudden it just started running. So I don't know if it was coming towards me, or it was just running and just being curious, who I was or anything, and it just took off.
Yeah, and a few of the cases I've recently collected were involving a lot of bone popping, a lot of rustling, and there's a lot of, like, the joints, people often make comment to, and it's very, like, a sadistic type sound that has kind of left people thinking in the same way. Now, I also brought up that because when your brother was out there and when your mom and dad were out there, when they were here, I'm pretty sure when you made mention, they said that that there was a lot of noise. Did they hear anything like that? Any, like, the bones popping or joints? Did they say anything about that or no?
My parents, no, they were out there for a while and they didn't hear anything or nothing. But my brother, he did say that he heard a lot of, like, noises happening, a lot of popping and all stuff like that, just running around and stuff. And you could hear it too, because I was actually out there with my brother when he was looking, but I just didn't want him to go further because I was afraid, because I didn't know what it was completely. I was like, okay, is this a dogman or what is it, And I just didn't want him to actually go out there, because he didn't have a weapon with him either, so I didn't want him to, like, if anything, I didn't want it to come and attack him, because after I heard what I heard. So, but there was a lot of noise and a lot of popping and a lot of branch breaking and everything, so he could hear it too, though.
And with this property, and this is something I wanted to ask you too earlier, was, have you kind of thought a bit that this property, could they be somewhat fascinated by the property? Is there like an initial backstory on the property? I mean, what I'm getting at here is, when we look at it from the Native American standpoint of what these creatures could be, is there like a particular history of the property that you might know of, and something out of which could possibly be they be attracted to? Have you looked into that, or never really thought too much of it in the sake of it because of not being relevant, I guess?
Yeah, I really never looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know that because since we live out in the forest and, it's Allegan County, our first sighting here in Allegan County was back in 1957. So from there, they've been having so many sightings around here of the Dogman, left and right. People talking about, the Dogman, they see this, the Dogman, they see that, and it's like, but I know my area where I'm at right now in that area, I don't really know anything much about the area, so there's really not much I can say about that other than what I see.
And one other thing I wanted to bring up too was, because I've heard this also in Dogman reports, have you heard, or has anyone mentioned in some of the cases you've heard of Dogman, of flashing lights, any particular glowing lights, fog lights, anything illuminating lights, whether it's before an encounter or after encounter? Has anyone that you've spoken to, or if you yourself seen any of these lights around the area particularly?
Well, according to people, no, but in my situation, yes. When I ever do hear a noise that sounds like out of, like a howling sound, that sounds like one of those howling sounds from a movie, like a werewolf sound, I see fog. And then I have seen blue light coming from, not completely from the sky, but from at least up there into the woods, and it was like a blue light, and it just like literally goes down and just spreads everywhere, and that I have seen that. And then like a couple days later, then I start to hear things, I start to see things.
And another reason why I brought that up was because there have been often reports of when people see these lights, there's a Dogman or some sort of psychedelic type kinesis that happens to, I guess, impose the human mind. In this case, it's happened to a few people. So with the Dogman and what you have seen and what your family's seen, one of the things that always intrigues me a bit about some of the scenery is when it comes to certain law enforcement. Has there been any type of activity with what police think about this, or if they've looked into it with some of the Dogman reports? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, the day that so I'm a very light sleeper, and one night, I'm surprised I didn't even actually wake up, because usually when I hear a noise, I actually wake up, right? But this night, for some reason, I didn't wake up until the next morning. So as I walked outside, I seen footprints, but then I'm looking at them, and I'm like, what the heck? So then I turn around behind the house, and there was like a whole bunch of footprints. But the weird thing, though, is that I saw 5 different sets of prints. That same day, I actually had seen 2 dispatchers in 2 different cars, and 2 Dogman catchers in their vehicles driving around the area, and they just kept driving around and driving around and driving around, and I'm just looking at them. I was like, what the heck is going on here, and I'm just looking at the prints. These prints were, you're talking about 5 different sets of prints, and each and one of these prints were so different from each other. You got one print where one of the prints, they had like a monster type looking print, and it just kept, like, there was 5 of them going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then after the 5th one, all of a sudden it turned into a human print. And that, I had my father actually go out there and check that out too. So as I took these pictures, he was actually, because he used to be a police officer himself, and he looked at me. He's like, this is not normal. We're talking about either a cryptid thing or a supernatural thing. This is exactly what he had said. And this thing, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big old prints. And then all of a sudden it turns from that to a human footprint. So I'm like, okay, what is going on here? And then, like, outside my window, there was a print. There was only one print of a goat print, and I'm like thinking, well, we don't have goats around here, and you're talking about winter. This is winter. And then after that, you had like other prints where there was like one separated away from another, and it just kept going. All of a sudden, it just ended up turning into one print. And it's like, and it just kept going. It's just like 5 different sets of prints, and nothing matched each other. And from that time, when I was looking out there, it's like, okay, what's going on here? I see 2 dispatcher cars driving around, and then I see 2 of these, animal patrol people going around, and they're just driving around in circles, checking out the areas and stuff. But none of them actually came out and actually said anything to me or my neighbors or anything. So I do believe that somebody must have called them because of the situation, because they were actually coming from the back side of our house, which is, towards the woods, so it might have been going further way out there to another property where maybe then they probably ended up reporting it.
What kind of baffles me a bit about this is the fact that you made mention that, we have regular, like, Dogman-like prints, then we have human prints, and then there's also goat prints. Now, there's a couple situations that can play off here. The first one being that perhaps maybe this was some sort of Dogman had a goat from a local farm. I mean, let me ask you this. Is there any farming or is there any, like, livestock around the area? I mean, you mentioned that there's no goats, but, like, is there any livestock or any places that you would know of?
We maybe like 20 miles away from us, we do actually have farms, but it's like 20 miles away from here. So, I don't know how, unless, whatever it was brought this and ended up making them prints, but, it was during the winter, so I don't know how they would actually escape, but it was just one print. That's what kind of freaked me out. Like, why is there just one print of a goat-looking thing, print on just one side, and where's the other half, or where's the other? It was just one. So that's what kind of got me. But yes, we do, like, probably 20, 25 miles away, we do have, there are farms back there, but that I know of, I think they just have cows and stuff. I don't think they have goats.
And that's one of the reasons why I asked that, was because if that is the case, then it would kind of also make sense if there were to be a Dogman to raid a local livestock, take a goat. There's been reports of livestock goats being taken before, but where you're at, if the local farm and livestock area is about 20, 25 miles away, to have Dogman be running that far in the woods distance period, that's almost about a good hour or so, maybe more. To kind of calculate it a little bit, might be an exaggeration, but personally, when it comes to prints like that, to have something and see something like that, that kind of freaks me a little bit out. Ryan, let me ask you this. What do you think about the whole prints as a whole?
A couple of things come to mind with that. At first, I thought possibly a shapeshifter of sorts, but listening to what you said about the goats and the livestock, that could be possible, but it wouldn't explain as just one print. And why would it just leave it right there for a moment and just disappear? That really wouldn't line up. So I'm guessing maybe, it could be some kind of shapeshifting going on here.
Yeah, and you know what, though, I do agree with Ryan with that, too, because that's the same thing my dad said, too, because when my dad and I both looked at those prints, Chris, we actually, that's the first thing that my dad said, too. We kind of looked at each other, and he looked at me, and he said, like I said, he used to be a cop, too, right? And he said himself, he goes, we're talking about shape-shifting here. You know what I mean? This is more of a shape-shifting thing, and it kind of, the most part is the big print, 5 of them, and all of a sudden it went from that to a human print, like a footprint. And I'm like thinking, okay, what the heck is going on here? So at the same time, I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at my dad, and we're both looking at each other. And my dad's like, you know what? This is a shape-shifting thing. And as for the goat thing, I mean, it was just one set of prints, so I really have no idea what the heck that was point all about. You know, so that was just weird. But it was all in a bunch. I mean, like 5 sets of different prints. It was crazy.
And to also say it too, because besides looking at it from that one perspective, I would have also thought of it too with it being a shapeshifter, because that's something, and it would also connect the dots pretty good. You know, you have one creature shapeshift into human tracks and then go into the next, and then whatever would happen, where the tracks lead to, despite that being, you know, just one track of a goat or a goat-like track. So yeah, whatever it was, and by looking at the photographs, it is pretty interesting and very freaky too, because like I had explained to Ryan, when I had first viewed them, I was pretty taken aback by it, because I was looking at something, it did not look at all like it was human-like. It didn't look like it had like a human-like, like the dog print, or the Dogman print, to be exact. Because it did at first, my first reaction, it looked reptilian, but that was because of the way the photograph was taken. But upon closer analysis, you could see the Dogman track, and then the human track, and then the morph of the goat track, and it really does freak you out. To me, I as someone who's a researcher too, I was taken a bit aback by it, because I didn't know what are you looking at first. It's like it goes from Dogman to shapeshifter type thing, but then at the same time it adds another thing that kind of makes no sense. So they're very interesting photographs.
Yeah.
It brings to mind the skinwalker.
And I try to take pictures of all of them too, you know. And when I actually showed some of those pictures to a couple of friends of mine, especially hunters, you know, because a lot of the hunters, you got to understand too, they go out there and they know from a footprint to another print, you know, because they're out there and they're the ones out there hunting. They said the same thing too. When I showed them these prints, they were like, "No, they're no ordinarily animal. That's not a wolf. That's not a coyote. That's not a bear. We don't even know what the heck that is, but that is something different." And a lot of my other friends too, you know, that have nothing to do with the hunting thing, and you know, they looked at it too, and they were actually saying the same thing too, and they said, "Well, this looks more like a shape-shifting kind of thing."
But definitely, when you look back at the photographs, it does present a shapeshifter's perspective, and that's something too. When I looked at them for like the third time, it definitely drew my attention, because it's when you see photographs like that, and then when you kind of question it, and for sure, a skeptic can easily comment that it could be very simple for someone to get a fake track print or a fake monster claw print, and then a human print, and then add on to it, and it'd be the skeptic portion of it. But with all the reports in Michigan, it doesn't surprise me that there is a Dogman and supernatural shape-shifting creatures of that nature out there.
Right. And especially the photos that I have sent you, the one in the back, from the back of our house, where it all started, you know, they had these big old prints, like, I don't know, it was just like a big old foot, you know, one right after the other, but it was still the same one, but it had like at least 20 of them, you know, and then from there, that's when it all started having 5 different sets of prints, and that's what really caught me, you know, and I'm just like, okay, I need to take a picture of this. This is not normal. This is crazy, you know, and then to see those 2 dispatchers driving around in 2 different vehicles, and then those 2, you know, animal patrol guys driving around, 2 of them, you know, it was crazy. It was one crazy day.
I can imagine, and I wouldn't even know where to begin to get into that format of sitting there and having to see that and then unfold with that. Doesn't help even more that there's animal control and police officers there.
No.
Now, Ryan, I'm going to hand it over to you, and if you throw out your questions you might have for, of course, Allie, because it's pretty interesting, a lot of the stuff that we've discussed here so far.
Oh, very much so. Actually, listening to her closely, I have to ask, Allie, what do you know about the skinwalkers?
The skinwalkers? I'm not really familiar too much about them. You know, we don't really have much about it over here. I don't know if it's like a different coast to coast thing, but it's mostly of a Dogman over here. I don't really know a whole lot about the skinwalkers.
A reason why I ask, though, is the transforming footprints, and that would actually line up very much so with the Skinwalker, as they're
Okay.
shapeshifters, so it would make perfect sense. Now, I've
Okay.
not read any reports of Skinwalkers in Michigan, but anything is possible with these things. So it's something that we should probably look into for you.
Okay.
I agree. I think it'd be good to look into as well. Uh, Ryan, what other additional questions did you have in general? Because one of the things I also think is pretty like unique about how Michigan is that a lot of the places that you had made mention to, Ali, is that there's a lot of activity. Even in
Correct.
when I was reading it past and present, just looking at several reports, Aguadine County has over 15, and they're all in time zones that are from like the 2010s all the way to back to the 60s. So there's a lot of an array of reports.
Mhm.
One thing I'd like to know, though, is Ellie, when you had these encounters, was there that ominous feeling of danger or dread that so many report? Because a lot of people will say that they
Um.
get the sensation that these things want to kill them or they're out to kill them. Was there anything like that with you?
You mean like them trying to kill them, or?
Trying to come after you. A lot of people will say that when they see a dogman or a dogman's around, they get this very strong sensation that it's there to harm them or any other people around.
Oh. No. I mean, the times that I have when I had seen the dog man or I've heard howling sounds and stuff like that,
Mhm.
I never really thought like, okay, well, it's trying to harm me or anything. I just
Okay.
felt like it was just letting me know. The way I sensed it was letting me know that it was there and it was watching me. You know what I mean? Like I never really thought
Right.
like, okay, it's gonna come out and attack me. You know, even though even if at that time when I thought, okay, it was running and oh my gosh, is it coming after me? But it didn't. You know what I mean? So I mean, but
Okay.
how would I have known? Because I went inside, but I come out and it wasn't there anymore. So I mean, in my case, I never really took it as it wanted to harm me. I feel like it was more curious, if anything.
Okay. All right. Well, that leads into my next question. Have you thought about imprinting at all? Because some animals, when they're around certain people for a length of time, they'll actually bond with these people in a way. And I'm kind of wondering if this is what's going on with you.
Like, what was it? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Okay, there's a thing called imprinting. It's when animals will bond with a certain people. It's due to their personality or just their nature, because animals can see things that we can't. So I'm kind of wondering if
Okay.
maybe the dogmen in your area have imprinted on you. That's why they keep coming around.
Well, I mean, and actually, I'm glad that you asked that question too, Ryan, because I've had friends too who, when I had actually explained these encounters with them and the things that I hear, they always tell
Right?
me, they're like, Ali, how do we not know that these things like you? You know, because for some reason they keep coming back. But it's not that I'm wanting them to come back, it's just that they come around, you know what I mean? But I mean, in a
Right.
way, I don't know. I mean, the way I see it, it's not like, okay, well, I don't get scared. Like, I mean, it's not that I don't get scared, but I know they're not trying to harm me. But I feel like when it does come around, I feel like it's curious about me. You know, I don't know if anything about it wanting to be around me. I just feel like it's more curious about me. That's all I know.
Okay, so that overwhelming fear just isn't there then. That's a good thing, actually. It's a very good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could be imprinting upon you. I mean, it does happen in nature quite often, as zookeepers will tell you. So it
Yeah.
could be a possibility. Again, that's something that we should look into for you as well.
Okay.
The thing about all this with dogmen and when it comes to imprinting and when it comes to what they do, I've heard some reports. I've also worked a couple investigations where we've often had people come back and have them come on the properties, do certain things on the properties, and we've also led to the conclusion that they would imprint because of the whole fascination of why would one be attracted to one. And this has often been argued too in not just groups but also too on other various topics when it comes to the idea of could you have a connection or a bond with these creatures. And that's the type of thing where it can go out of the ballpark or in it depending on how you go about it. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was personally, what do you think these things are, Allie? What do you think these dogmen are?
Like, as in, well, I mean, to me, they're just Dogman, I don't really see him as anything evil, if anything, you know. Shape-shifting, I mean, sometimes I feel like maybe it might be a shape-shifting thing. I don't know, but I don't really see them as an evil perceptive, you know what I mean? I don't see them as a bad, cryptic monster coming out and trying to attack somebody or anything, you know? I think they're just curious. That's the way I'm taking it, you know? Kind of like, I mean, that day when I had seen the one with the green eyes, you know, I mean, yeah, I was scared and terrified, and I kept staring at it, but it kept staring at me. So it's like I froze, and I just kept looking at it, and it kept staring at it and staring at it, and it just kept looking at me. Then, next you know, he's at my window, yet still looking at me, you know what I mean? So I don't really see him as anything bad, you know? I just feel like they're just curious, you know?
I would agree, because that's also the same conclusion I had when I was talking to you earlier, was that I believe they are curious, and
right.
They have some sort of fascination. But at the same time, curiosity, I mean, that's any animal, I think, especially one, like, for people who are whether the zookeepers or people who are in that type of trade, where you do develop a bond with animals or something. And I'm not saying in that type of Dr. Seuss type way. I mean, this is Dogman, but it's the whole concept that there is definitely curiosity. I personally don't think in any of the reports you've mentioned that you've had firsthand with them that there is a sense of intimidation or an approach of an attack. I feel that if these things wanted to attack or make it known that they wanted to attack, I feel they would have done something that, now or when the time when your brother and your mom and dad were out there. Like, I would feel that would, I feel that those were, so that would be the thing to me, that if this thing wanted to attack you, that it would do stuff like that.
By now.
Correct.
Right. And that's exactly how I felt too, you know what I mean? Like, the times that I seen it or heard it or even smelled it, you know, I that's the way I thought too. It's like, well, if it really wants to come out and attack me, it'll do it. But I just feel like, okay, maybe it's just curious, you know, like, who am I, you know, what is she, you know, like, what is she doing, you know? That's the kind of way I just took it as, whatever, you know, so, but yeah, I don't think it much bad of it.
I have to agree. But one other thing too, a few other questions I want to ask. With the Dogman and what we've talked about, do you have any particular advice or anything that you would want to throw out to people who've seen this in the area of where you reside, or in general, the whole community as a whole watching for someone who's had an encounter?
I guess my advice to be is that not all Dogmen will, I mean, as I know, the Wine Encounter, you know, they're not bad, you know, they're just there, they're curious, just, you know, watch them, but just go, you know, live your life, you know, just go what you gotta do and just let them be, you know what I mean? Unless you know that they're actually coming out and trying to attack you, then I can understand, you know, but if they're not, then just let them be, you know, they're just being curious on who you are, what you're doing, and stuff like that, so.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because, you know, I know that, like, when you watch all these scary movies, like, with werewolves, you know, okay, let's kill them with a silver bullet, and these guys are bad and stuff, you know, they make them out to be bad, you know, monsters, you know, but, I mean, with my experience, you know, they didn't seem to be, I mean, yeah, I was freaking out, but they never did anything to me, you know what I mean? So, it doesn't exactly mean that they're bad just because you see a 7-8 feet tall monster walking around on 4 legs or 2 or hind legs, you know, whatever. It doesn't mean they're bad, you know, I mean, just, if you know they're not doing anything to you and they're just curious, then why bother to try to shoot it? Why bother to make a big scandal about it? Why bother to even do anything to them, you know? Unless they're doing something to you, I get it, you know, but if not, then just let them be, you know, just curious, you know, so. I mean, that would be some advice that I would give to people. Just, you know, they're just there, just like any human being, just looking at you like, okay, you know, hey, you know, that person, oh, look at that person. I know this person. Okay, fine. I'm walking away. I mean, just like that. Cryptid monsters, animals, whichever. They're the same way as a human person. So I just think that just let them be. As long as they're not hurting you, you're okay.
Very well said.
I agree 100%, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to hear a lot of people begin to start understanding that insight with them, because not all of these creatures are demons and monsters that are perceived and described.
Right.
And it's good to see that there's other people out there who are understanding it, and that,
Exactly.
not to draw a conclusion of a connection to really throw somebody off, but to the basic understanding that these are regular creatures that have specific personalities, and what they are doing, and whatever the case is, not all of them are made out to be what we see in Hollywood.
Exactly. And I think, and that's something that, people need to understand too. I mean, I know, like, there's so many people with sightings. Oh, I seen this Dogman. Oh, I seen that. Oh my gosh, he's gonna come at me. But it's not like that. I mean, sure, you see a Dogman, but I mean, what is he doing to you? He's just standing there looking at you. Unless he's coming at you, why bother to even make it a big scandal? I mean, they're just there. And they're curious, just like a human being would be curious with another human being, or even an animal looking at you. You know what I mean? So, I mean, to me, it's just, just move on and let them be. They're just animals, cryptid monsters walking around, just living their life, So, I mean, they haven't hurt me, so, I mean, and that's a good thing. So, I'm just happy for that. And, I mean, if they continue to come around here, hey, it's all good.
I have to agree with that. Hey, Ryan, do you have any other additional questions for Allie?
I was actually curious about the lights that she mentioned. I wanted to know what she thought those lights came from, if they were, extraterrestrial craft, or maybe something supernatural that we haven't touched on.
Actually, Ryan, that's a good question. Okay, so that's what I thought too. When I had gone outside, and it was actually around 11, 12 o'clock at night, and when I seen the light. It wasn't coming completely from the sky, like sky up there. It was just like a little bit of the sky, and then poof down into the woods, and it just like spread everywhere. And you could just see like the dust of the blue, but it was a blue light. It was a big, bright blue light. And to me, when I saw that, I took it more like a supernatural kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I didn't take it in a negative way or anything. I just like, okay, I saw this, and I mean, it's like, okay, but that's about it.
Possibly some type of energy, maybe? That was just,
Yeah, that's how I took it too, like an energy type of thing, yep.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, that's something too, especially with the lights. I've often heard about the extraterrestrial, and comments on it too. It's definitely had me question a lot of things, especially. Allie, have you yourself considered doing any investigation or any research going into when it comes to Dogmen, like since setting up a team, or in general doing your own solo investigations?
Yes, I have my own channel doing some stuff where and it's not all about the cryptid, but I'm because I live in Michigan. Yes, I do plan on going forward and going into the deep woods when all this lockdown is done and over with, and actually know a little bit more about the Dogman, because since we're known as the Dogman, and we're not actually far away from Wisconsin too, because of course they got the beast of prey too, and that's like 2.5 hours away from us. So yes, I do plan on actually going out and investigating and try to do a little research in the Dogman, definitely.
I definitely support it, and I definitely follow it. I mean, personally, I have to say, when it comes to speaking to eyewitnesses, and of course people who are very open to talk and come forward about it, speaking of Dogman, I have to thank you for, opening up about this. And personally, I mean, I really support when you do go out and do the investigations. Please keep me and Ryan updated, if you have...
Oh, for sure. sure, definitely, Chris and Ryan, definitely. I will definitely keep you guys updated.
We truly appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, even when I do go out there, maybe once all this is down, you guys can also come down here whenever you guys get your chances, and we can do a little research on that too, if you'd like, when you guys have your time as well.
I'd be all for that.
Yeah, so.
I'm very much so. I'm down for that as well.
Okay.
Well, Allie, listen, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. And what I do before we go ahead and conclude, if you have any other additional words you'd like to say, or if anything, by all means. So, floor's to you. If anything not, then go from there.
I just want to say thank you for letting me get on your show, and to everyone who's actually been through any encounters with a dogman. Just remember, guys, not every dogman is a bad dogman. And as long as it doesn't come at you, it doesn't exactly mean that he's a bad dogman. So if you see one, just let him be. I mean, as long as he doesn't come at you, you're good. So just do your own thing and let them be. So that's all I can say, and that's about it. Well,
Allie, thank you again. You have a great evening, and you take care now.
You too, thank you. Yeah, you too.
Take care, Allie.
Yep. Yeah, you too. Bye, Ryan. Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Allie again for coming on the show. I know it takes a lot for people out there, not just with Dogman eyewitnesses, but Bigfoot eyewitnesses, paranormal eyewitnesses, who often have a hard time trying to talk about their encounters of what they've seen, because when to go back to experience it, it can be a heavy thing. It's like when anybody's asked about something that was traumatic in their life, whether it was a car accident, whether it was witnessing someone pass, or if you're a war veteran and you saw things in the war. Everybody suffers from PTSD. Everybody has a hard time or a nightmare with what they see. And speaking to Allie, she's a very strong woman, and much stronger than many of other eyewitnesses we've spoken to on the show, because personally, to have the strength to have a dogman encounter, to still talk about it, and to know that there's other things going on, but also to keep an open mind and a positive outlook on it, it's an important factor when you have these encounters. It's hard to do, especially because of the nature of such situation, but it does liquefy. It does play off pretty well. So I wanted to thank Allie again for coming on the show. It was great to have her on, and personally, I would love to have her on again, and I hope that you guys taking keen with the advice that she thrown out. It's very good advice. But folks, we're going to conclude the show tonight, and like I said, the other Venomous Fringe show, we always throw in a couple things, but this time we're going to do something a little different. I want you guys to go check out a couple of YouTubes that I think are personally some pretty hot topics and interesting topics. I want to throw out a big shout out to the Cryptid Files, guys. Check out their YouTube. I'm throwing a link down below. They got some pretty interesting content. They've talked about the Jersey Devil. They've talked about the Dogman. They've talked about Bigfoot. Paranormal stuff too. Guys, check out the Cryptid Files. Those two do an amazing job, very terrific job of their content. Check out Beyond the Veil Investigations as well. Very wonderful duo going out and researching, very good paranormal investigators as well, guys. And also too, guys, always check out Lee McNew, Cryptids Mysteries. It's always a good time checking out Lee's content and everything that he puts out there too. Those are going to be my top 3 shout outs for this week. If you guys are paranormal investigators, if you guys are cryptid podcast show hosts or whatever, and you want your content to be promoted, if you guys want to go ahead and send out a reach, or you want to have a promotion or a shout out, send a comment down below or send me an email. Overall, folks, if you guys want that, we will gladly do it here on the Venomous Fringe. We're very open to other content creators out there of this nature. And if you guys would like to get in contact with me, you can get a hold of me at thevenomousfringe@gmail.com. If you guys would like to follow us on social media, I have my Instagram and my Twitters down below in the description, as also Ryan Tromblaze. You can can also check out our Discord server that we're in. If you guys want to be a part of the Discord server, we'd love to have you guys aboard and get your own interpretations and opinions in that chat box, as well as check out our Facebook group. And also, too, if you guys would like to contribute to the show and leave a donation, there's a PayPal link down below. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris Fringe. You're listening into the Venomous Fringe. Fringeaholics and newcomers, you all have a good evening now.